where do you find yourself having ease of taking compliments? And then maybe on the other end, this is a great question too. Where do you find it easy to take constructive criticisms?
Don't let being good in one area get to your head in all the other areas, because that's when you stop getting better holistically. But also give yourself the credit for what you work hard at simultaneously.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, NLU Weekly Live Podcast for week number 123, 123. Can you have humility without confidence? So just a little housekeeping, a bit of housekeeping before we get started today. We're going to change up things. So Alan and I used to do a 40-minute keynote that turned into a 40-minute live podcast, and then we would do a 20-minute Q&A at the end. We are now going to do a 20-minute live podcast where it's very much a conversation with the goal of adding value, and then at the end we're going to do a 20-minute Q&A. So we're going to change up things a little bit. It's going to be a little bit more freestyle and less us up here just saying point 1, point 2, point 3. More conversational, I would say.
Yeah, it's time to evolve, brother.
Did I cover it all?
I think so.
You think so?
I feel good about it.
Yes, likewise. So Alan and I were talking about what we were going to do today. And I said, what if we talk about humility? I think a lot of people have a misconception about what humility really is. And I know in our community, from what we've experienced, a lot of the people in our community have low self-worth and maybe low confidence. They don't necessarily believe in themselves. And this is how it all connects. So Alan used to say this all the time. He used to say, Kevin, you're so humble. You're a very humble human being. And I would say, thank you. I appreciate that so very much. And that made me feel really good. But as I got further and further into this journey, I started to realize that I don't think I was actually very humble. I don't think I had humility at a deep level. I just didn't have belief and I didn't have confidence. So I was kind of more self-deprecating than anything. And the opposite of that is, and this is the question I want you to ask yourself. This is really the measure. Can you take a compliment as well as you can take criticism? So when people would compliment me, I could not take it because I didn't actually have the confidence to say, you know what? Yeah, I am a pretty good speaker. Or thank you so much for the compliment of being in shape. I've worked really hard on my body over the last 15 years. But on the other end, some of us struggle taking criticism, or we'll just say constructive criticism. So Alan might say, hey, the way you opened that probably wasn't as strong as you could. Maybe we should try this next time. I think the true definition of humility is being able to take compliments as well as criticism. Because if you can't take a compliment, it doesn't mean you're humble. Maybe you just lack confidence. Maybe you lack belief. Maybe you don't actually believe that you're worthy of the compliment that you're getting. And then on the other end, if you struggle taking criticism, it might be because that's attached to your self-worth. You don't believe you can actually change it. So we thought we would have an open conversation about that tonight.
So when Emilia and I first met, I remember a couple months into our relationship, this is 2.5 years ago now, I remember she said something along the lines of, this is when we were, I think before we were doing relationship talk, she said something along the lines of, I've never been with someone who's so humble. And I remember talking to her about this, and I said, I really appreciate that, but I've never really, I don't know if I've ever really identified, I guess I don't really consider myself very humble. And she said, Alan, that's exactly what someone who's humble would say. And it was like, whoa. Is that true? Like, do I have humility? And I think it's weird for me because I think there are times in my life where I was arrogant, for sure. Many times in my life where I was arrogant. And I think we all can say that at times. But I really do feel like humility is something that's difficult to understand. I seriously, I don't think that I ever fully understood what humility really was. As a matter of fact, I still don't fully.
Same.
Yeah, and so one thing I will share, I was with a client recently who I was working with this person for like a year and a half, and then he came back into my life and we caught up, and he's like, how's it going? And we ended up working together again, which is awesome. And he came back with a lot of humility and a lot of vulnerability. Because I asked him, I'm like, how you doing? Like, how's everything going? And he asked me too. And I told him, like, oh my God, the team, tripled the team and tripled the revenue and everything's growing and podcast listens. And like, there was a lot of new. This was an 8-month span that we weren't coaching. And I asked him the same question. He said, honestly, man, like, not much. I got a house, I bought a house. But like, other than that, I haven't really done much. As a matter of fact, early on when we were coaching, he had applied for this grant. And it was a $25,000 grant for this specific project. And we had, applied for it. He had applied for it, but I was coaching him through the process. And he ended up getting it. And he's like, yeah, man, I got the grant. I haven't even done anything with it yet. He was very much in humility and vulnerability. And I now have a good gauge of this. I did not always. And after that, we started working together. And he started crushing it. I mean, he got a lot of success in a very short amount of time, and I'm very, very proud of him. And when he started to really succeed at a super high level, and this happens to a lot of us, this happens to me for sure. When you start to succeed at a higher and higher and higher level, sometimes you lose your humility. Sometimes you lose sight of playing like a beginner again. Sometimes you start to think you've mastered it. And the moment you think you've mastered something is the moment you lose your humility and you stop listening. You start assuming you got it all figured out. Maybe you start feeling like you have the Midas touch and you can't lose. And so inevitably you start to lose. The quote that Kevin and I use often on this is, when you stop doing what got you to the dance, you don't get to keep dancing. And so he and I had a very honest, vulnerable conversation where he's like, I'm struggling. I think I lost my humility. And now every single time we get on the phone, I literally am having him check in with humility and vulnerability. If humility and vulnerability are high, he's going to win. I'm telling you. Because now he has multiple coaches. He's leading his team way more effectively. He's listening to his team. He's getting feedback. He's reading books. He's back into personal development. His habits are 100% right now. 100%. And for a little while there, I was having trouble getting through, and I think it's because the protector was up, aka the ego, which we all have. And so I want everyone today to contemplate what humility really is, whether or not you actually have it. And then I know a lot of people who appear very humble, but they're actually just don't believe in themselves. And then I know some people who really just don't have humility. They believe in themselves so much that they lose sight of the fact that they're human and that they make mistakes too. And again, I've been guilty of both of those. So I think let's just contemplate humility here.
I have a new definition. I believe true humility is the accurate representation of the truth. That's what I think it is. Because I think everybody, well, I'll speak for myself. I have been off on both ends. But I think people are usually, especially our community, is usually off on the end of being able to take a compliment. So this is the question I would pose to you if you're out there watching or listening. Where do you find yourself capable of taking compliments? I've always been able to take compliments in the gym, Alan. Always. But I think that's because that's where I had the most belief.
Right.
And I felt like I earned it. When people would say, hey, you're in really good shape, it's like, well, number one, I can look at the statistical average human being and realize I'm in better shape. I'm more in shape than many. So I understand, well, I actually am, in the grand scheme of things, in really good shape.
Awareness, yeah.
Awareness was there. But for a while, when it came to podcasting, it's very hard because there's no measure. Like, how do we measure whether or not we're good podcasters? We had 8,000 downloads this week. Awesome. But that doesn't necessarily mean we're good. It could just mean that people like listening to us. What is good, right? So I think when it came to like speaking and coaching and podcasting, it was harder to take those compliments. But where do you find yourself having ease of taking compliments? And then maybe on the other end, this is a great question too. Where do you find it easy to take constructive criticisms? I remember this, Alan? I think somebody left us a comment or a review on the podcast, and they said, I can't stand when Kevin starts the podcast and screams and I have to like turn down my volume. I was so upset by that. But I think I got to the point where eventually I realized I think that's probably an accurate representation of the truth. And then I was able to take that and we changed the intro. And that was one of the reasons we changed the intro. So while at the time my ego would have said, look, whoever wrote that is being a pain in my butt, I would say thank you to them now because I actually think that is the truth. And humbly, I think they were more right than I was. And that's hard to admit, but I think that's what true humility is.
So how do you know? I recently did this with one of the team members. I said, can I just get your perspective for a second on humility with the NLU team? And including her and including me, we rated from 0 to 10 how humble each team member is. You got a higher score than pretty much everybody else.
Appreciate that.
Christina got a very high score. I don't think I understood. Here's what I do know. Having coached, I've been coaching for a really long time now. Really long time. Again, it's relative. So 5 years. And I just surpassed, I think, 1,400 sessions. And so one thing that I know that I really don't like is coaching someone with low humility. I really dislike that. There's this one person who reached out to me for coaching in particular, and I knew right after the call, I was like, I'm not going to coach this guy. No way. And I didn't know it at the time. This is probably 7 months ago. But I couldn't articulate it back then, but now I realize he just has very, very low humility. He's extremely arrogant, extremely, extremely arrogant. And in my head, it was like, you called me. Like, you reached out to me. Like, what are we doing here? Am I going to coach you or are you, why are we, I'm just butting up against his ego. And it's understandable too. Whatever, we all have an ego. I now, on the NLU team, we have certain core values. And when we are considering someone to be on the NLU team, we like to have them embody those core values at a very high level. The most important core value is consistency and reliability. The second one now in my consciousness is humility. Coachability. How coachable are you? And I guess my question for everyone listening or watching this, contemplating here, is like, how coachable are you? How open to feedback are you? How much are you looking for new perspectives and answers and understandings? And don't get me wrong, you can't take everyone's feedback as gold because it's not. And you don't want to ask, a gardener about astrophysics and take their advice. And nothing against a gardener or an astrophysicist, but if you're going to take advice about gardening, ask a gardener. If you're going to take advice about physics, ask an astrophysicist. And that's actually why with the books that I choose nowadays, I'm actually doing a lot more research. I was talking to Amelia about that recently. I was talking to Kev earlier. The card that we use, the business credit card, wasn't working on Amazon earlier for Audible, and I was freaking out. I'm like, dude, I did so much research on these books. I need these books. Need these books right now. So freaking out is probably the wrong term, but
accurate.
I do a lot of research now about what books I'm reading now because I want more research-based, scientist-based, data-based, backed-up books. The Art of Impossible, we interviewed Stephen Kotler, is a perfect example of someone who I think is really humble. He knows that he knows a lot, but he also knows that he knows very little. It's this weird duality between, I know I haven't mastered this fully, but I'm also confident that I've mastered it more than most. And there's a way to hold that simultaneously. And so I guess my question for you, Kev, would be, what did you used to think was humility, and what do you think it is now?
I just wanted to take a quick second and give a shout out and a huge thank you to Next Level Podcasting Solutions, Kevin and his team. They have been incredible to work with, very flexible, on the spot with any questions that I have or any concerns that I have. When I first started out my podcast, I was doing everything on my own. I have no editing background. I have no podcasting background. I knew nothing about it. And so I was bootstrapping all of this myself while I was still trying to take on my role as a full-time mom. And once I met up with Kevin and we had these discussions and I got on board with adding an editing team, oh my goodness, it just lifted this weight off of me. It lifted my time that I was spending doing my editing. And in the beginning, full transparency, when I was editing just my individual recordings, it was a little more manageable, not super manageable. And then when I started doing my interviews for the podcast, it was hours upon hours of me doing the editing that didn't include any of the promotional material that I am now getting from Kevin and his team. It wouldn't have been sustainable. I would not have been able to keep up with that. So I recommend Kevin and his team. They have done wonderful work in helping me grow my podcast. I have really enjoyed working with the editing team, and it definitely feels like more of a team environment versus me hiring them to do a specific job. I mean, we all work collaboratively on the projects that I have, and I have these crazy ideas sometimes, and they come up with a solution to fit my needs. I can't recommend them enough. I really enjoyed working with them. Kevin and the Next Level Podcasting Solutions, thank you so much for the work that you have done in the past and are continuing to do for me. I'm growing this community and growing this platform with a beautiful team that is working for me and with me to see my vision and help that come to life. So thank you again so much. I really appreciate you guys.
I genuinely thought humility was being able to take a compliment and not letting success get to your head. That was kind of...
I think that's pretty accurate, though.
I think it's understanding that you're wrong and right simultaneous. I really think what you said about Stephen Kotler is kind of the truth. Because I'm the same way where I'll have a conversation with somebody and I can tell right off the bat, it's like, you brought me here because I'm the perceived expert on podcasting, but you're not listening to what I'm saying. What I'm saying might not be the truth. I'm not saying what I'm saying is the truth, but it's very clear that you're not even giving it the opportunity to be. Because I don't think there's humility there. That
Can
level
you
of like...
explain that example? Like the scenario of how that happened? Because I know exactly what you're talking about. That's what this person, it's like in my head, it's like, why did you contact me then?
Yeah.
Like you literally reached out asking for my coaching, and now here we are, and it's like you don't... And in my head, it's like, I don't want to sit here and be like, dude, I'm way ahead of you in everything.
Yeah.
Because that's not humility. Yeah. But yet, I am.
It's hard because somebody in the interaction has to be humble.
I know.
It's kind of how it works. I think it's kind of like a stoplight. If two people, if I think of it from like the perspective of professional sports, it's like I don't think many professional athletes are humble. I think they're like delusional about their skills, which is probably good in that scenario. But like that's why there's a lot of ego on the football field, hypothetically. Right? I just think many of them are not very humble.
You mean holistically?
Yeah.
Right. Because that one... Well, we talked to some professional athletes. We interviewed them on this show. There's two in particular I'm thinking of. They actually, one of them had realized how they were in the Olympics, and they realized how egotistical they were later in life, because what they said was this. They said it gets to your head when you're so valued. It's very hard to not let it get to your head when you're so valued by the world. Because when you're in the Olympics, the whole world sees you differently, even though you're good at one thing. And so what he described on this episode was it leaks in that you think you're good at other stuff too. And I think that's another thing of humility too. Like, I'm a great speaker or coach or whatever, but I'm not good at a lot of stuff. And you'll hear me say that on this podcast because I need to remember that I'm not good at a lot of stuff. I'm good at the stuff that I'm working hard to be good at. I honestly, even that, I don't know. I think that on Book Club, we did this recently. We're reading Brene Brown, Dare to Lead, and I was going to plug it at the end, but here we go. So Book Club, join us. But anyways, so she's talking a lot about vulnerability, and the last chapter was on grounded confidence. And I really like that term, grounded confidence. It's about being down to earth, but also being very confident simultaneously, meaning like you know that you're good at this thing, but it's not getting to your head to where you're out in the sky and you think you're better than everyone else because you're good at this one thing, right? And so I asked Book Club, I said, okay, I want everyone here, every time there's an excerpt, I read an excerpt and then we ask a question and we contemplate. What's something you have grounded confidence in? Grounded confidence, in Brene Brown's words, is something that you've failed forward so many times that you got really good at it through failure and courage that you've really earned your merit. It's like a merited skill, right? So Serena Williams has earned that in tennis, Leonardo DiCaprio in acting. Like, he's pretty confident, and he's earned that through doing it since he was 11, right? So I asked everyone, like, what's something you're really good at, you have grounded confidence in? And book club was very vulnerable. They said, like, I'm scared to say I'm awesome at something. It's like very uncomfortable for people to say, yeah, honestly, I'm like, Bianca was there. Shout out to Bianca. She said, I'm honestly really strong in the gym. Like, I'm good at the gym, but I've been doing it for however many years. And she was so uncomfortable saying that. And I think it's interesting because, and this is what I said to book club, and I'll contemplate it here. I said, if we're going to be criticized for all the stuff we suck at, are we not allowed to, like, give ourselves credit for the things that we've earned? You know, are we not allowed to, like, feel good about being good at stuff? I remember growing up, I got a lot of love and praise for being academic and academically inclined. And
Same.
when you're one of the, yeah, I didn't know if that was, yeah.
No,
So
that's not true.
I remember, Kev, in high school, I said this. I said, it's interesting because some of my friends get in a lot of trouble, and I would do the same things and not get in trouble because I got so favored by some of the faculty because I was the, smart kid or whatever. And I guess what I would say is this. Don't let being good in one area get to your head in all the other areas, because that's when you stop getting better holistically. But also give yourself the credit for what you work hard at simultaneously.
It's interesting. I had a call, and I know 20 minutes is up. It goes by so fast.
Holy crap.
I had a call the other day with somebody. I was doing a podcast breakthrough session, and it's very interesting because she was saying, she's like, well, I know I'm a really good coach, but I don't want to, like, sell my coaching. I don't want to seem like salesy. And I said, well, that's different. Like, those are different things. If you're humble enough to understand that you're valuable, you should also be humble enough to understand that you can help people with your coaching, and you're actually doing them a disservice by not helping them. So even to your point, I mean, if you're going to, and this is what I like to think of it as, if you're going to take constructive criticism, you also have to take constructive compliments. I think that's the only way really to be truly humble. And I think, and this is a breakthrough in this moment for me, I think that's why having a community of people who are like-minded and growth-minded is so important, because on that call, you helped people actually be more humble. I really believe that. Where some people might say, well, you're actually inspiring arrogance or something. I don't think so. I don't think that. Yeah. I think the fact that you can actually say what is, that I believe that is why I probably got a high rating of humility, is because I'll say, Alan, you're smarter than I am. I'm just admitting the truth. I'm just aware of the truth and willing to say it. That's a fact. It's not emotional. That's a logical fact. You are smarter than I am. That's okay, right? I am better at naming podcast titles than you. Cool. In this regard. Maybe 100%. Not when it comes to... But I think you and I probably feel like each other, because I think you're very humble. I didn't in high school, but I also didn't know what humility was. I think it's because you and I are just very
and
honest.
In all fairness, probably wasn't.
Right. Yeah, you might, maybe. But yeah. I believe you and I live in the truth more. So when you say, Kev, you're really good at something, it's like, well, I know you're not lying, so I should probably figure out a way to, and I know I'm safe to own that because I've said things about you. That's the interesting thing, is when you build an environment where people can just live in the truth, I think that's how you build confidence and humility simultaneously.
Well, the last thing I'll say here, I know we got to go.
Yeah.
After 26, I did make a commitment to myself to fully live in the truth. So whatever that is, good or bad or ugly, like after the car accident at 26, I wanted to live in the truth. And I think that's why I say I probably was arrogant in high school, is because I think that I fell victim or was guilty of, I won't say fell victim, I was guilty of being really good at one thing and allowing that to like leak into the other things. And then I was also bullied, and I think that not being valued made me want to be more significant.
Yeah.
And so now that we're older and we've earned a lot more through merit and time and consistency and compound effect, I don't feel like I have that chip on my shoulder as much, where I don't have to prove to other people stuff as much as I used to. And it's nice. It's really nice to earn things through your own merit, because at the end of the day, all I really care about is that you value you. But through merit, not just through like delusion, I guess.
Last thing before we do Q&A, Aim, I know, I can see you behind the scenes. You're ready and raring to go. This is why action is so important. And this is a breakthrough for me also. If you lack confidence, you might not take the action to actually get real humility, because things might go better than you think. So if you assume you can't speak and you never take action into becoming a speaker, then I don't believe you're actually understanding humility in that regard. So what's a good example? How can you be humble about something you've never tried before? I don't think you can. Unless you admit, I could try it. It might go better than I expect. That's why the marathon, I think, was such an important or an interesting thing. And we'll be talking about it forever, obviously, because we already talked about it with all the episodes. But when you finished that, you texted me. It humbled you.
Yeah.
Why? Because
I thought it would be easier than it was.
Exactly.
I didn't think it would be easy, but I did think it would be easier than it was.
But imagine if you were on the other end and you never believed you could start a podcast, right? You didn't believe it was possible, and you did your first episode and it actually went better than you expected.
Right.
And then somebody said, hey, that episode went really well. You might be able to say, yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks so much. It actually went way better than I expected. I think that's being humble.
Yeah.
Versus,
agreed.
No, it was a piece of garbage. I suck. I'm never going to be good. Like, I don't think that's just self-deprecating.
Same.
It's not true humility. Next level nation. I mean this with humility, but again, this is something that is hard to say at times. I believe Alan and I can help you if you're watching this or listening to this at a deeper level than most humans walking the planet. Not because we know everything, but because we have studied this, and I believe we know our listeners at a very, very deep level. We know this community at a very, very deep level, because for most of my life, I struggled with many of the things that our community struggles with. Join us for our 8th round of group coaching if you are trying to get to the next level of your life and you say, well, I love the podcast, I want to get more, and I can't necessarily afford one-on-one coaching. Let me check out this group coaching thing. Our 8th round starts October 4th, 2022. We're only taking 10 people, and we have 1-month payment plans, 3-month payment plans, 6-month payment plans. We want to make it affordable and accessible to everybody. So if you're interested, everything you need to know will be below and or in the show notes.
As you know, we have a book club. I already mentioned it on this episode, or the previous episode, rather. Dare to Lead by Brené Brown is the book that we're on right now. We're about to do part 2 of section... I honestly don't know. One second. Part 2 of section 5, which is living into our values. It's every Saturday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a full hour. It's completely private. You do not have to participate. A lot of people do. There's really good contemplative questions in there. Brandon on the NLU team says, I don't understand, like, more people should come to this thing. And we've got a good crowd, which is great. But he's like, it's basically free coaching. Coaching from Brené Brown. Coaching from a community of people who are going to contemplate these concepts. So if you want more self-awareness, this is what I'd say. If you want to get to the next level, you have to understand yourself at a deeper level. That's what this book club is about. It's extraordinary books with extraordinary people. Every single Saturday, we are about to do our 74th session in a row, so it's pretty cool.